Okay, real quick. So the first letter that forms within the source, we'll call it God. You know, God is a word that has been used to misrepresent certain realities and try and confuse us and get us to believe things that are, let's just say, far from true. The intention behind the word is to describe or define the being which has omnipotence, omniscience, and omnipresence. Right? So, here we are. Omnipotence is, on the table. It's something that is an essential element, an essential quality of being God. Something that you cannot unhave, right? Something you cannot be without if you would actually be considered God. And it's something that you don't necessarily have any control over. It's a trait, it's not an ability. You either are omnipotent and all things that go with that, or you are not omnipotent. There's really not any way around that because of the nature of omnipotence itself. That's just how it works. If there's anything that you can't do, again, anything you cannot do, then you are not omnipotent. And because of the nature of reality itself, anything you can do, you will do. If you create a thought, it manifests. That is the omnipotence itself. You can't directly remove the omnipotence. You can create, and in those creations live and experience what it is like to be different levels of, let's, for lack of a better word, powerless. Right? You can do that. Then it eventually comes back to you. But in a sense, it was always with you in the first place. It never actually left. Okay, that was the delusion. And that gets us to omnipresence. Because the true God, has to be present everywhere at all times. It's not that God can be present anywhere at any time, right? And we don't even attempt to structure it that way when we think about it, when we say, okay, this is true, and then we forget about it real quick. Because in some sense, it doesn't matter it's to us affect our experience or not, whether or not we are always conscious of it, right? We will experience things differently. But in fact, God is present everywhere all the time, but not just around you, within you. And a lot of people have a misconception about their selves, their bodies anyway, not their actual selves, and not even their identity. But a lot of people have a misconception about their body. A lot of people, even though we know, innately, we know on a academic level even that the body is not a single organism. We mostly conceive of it as a single organism, I would hazard to guess, almost universally, right? I wouldn't be surprised if it's more than 95% of us that do this regularly. We think of ourselves as a single organism, but we're not. We're planets, each one of us. Just like this planet we live on, she hosts all these organisms that she may or may not even be aware of. Right? The same way we are not generally aware of the microorganisms that live on and within each of us. Microorganisms that we depend on, by the way, not to destroy the system, but to protect the system. Right? And those natural organisms have guests all the time, and sometimes they're welcome guests, and sometimes they just don't even pay attention to the existence of the guests. And sometimes those guests cause problems, right? Um, but we are planets. We are living organisms, just like our planet. She breathes and she bleeds, you know. There's magma in her veins. The atmosphere is her lungs, right? She hosts, she creates life. She grows, she ages, she changes. Spam. Okay, we're gonna ignore the spam. I don't want to start over. I want you guys to know that none of this is scripted. So, um, she is a living organism, which is composed of many, many other, not just in quantity, but in kind. There are many other kinds of organisms that live on the planet Earth, right? On Mother Gaia, as they call her in the sci-fi age that we are quickly moving into, Terra, right? Whatever name she has for whatever era, for whatever group, for whatever people, she is a living thing that is an example of ourselves. Is it no wonder how we treat the earth? And I'm not saying that the earth can't take it. I'm not saying it can or it can. Who knows? I know the earth has cycles and it's been much warmer than it is now, all this global warming stuff. You got to take that into consideration. The earth isn't just here. You're saying you're saving the earth for the earth, but the earth isn't just here for humans. That was the whole point of it. If the earth is here for humans, then humans should enjoy the earth. Um, but if the earth is here for the earth, then that's a different conversation. If we do our duty towards the earth and protect the earth and help her to be healthy, that's a different conversation, right? But again, she may not even notice us, and she too has her cycle. She was born, she'll live, and one day she'll die, right? And every organism on her, that's what you don't understand about yourself. When you die, there is some lingering life, right? New organisms come in to feed off of you. That is the cycle, right? But what you have to understand is that when you die, all the organisms that roll with you, that really lived with you, that were your people, your critters, your life, all those organisms are gonna die too. Right? They're all gonna die too. And within all of those organisms is you. And without all of those organisms, and we'll get to the within too as well part, without in other words, around all of those organisms is God, is the presence. But you're the environment on that scope. So the presence of God is within you to be present over those organisms, right? In fact, the presence of God is within you and is within them to be able to record the experience again. God does not have the ability to change itself, but it has the ability to pretend to change itself and create experiences that can be brought back so that it can understand them better and absorb its ideals and see what it is really, why it is really, and what it wants to do about it. Because there's only three choices. In my opinion, there's only one choice because others don't really seem like choices at all. But I'll get to that. But inside each organism, even if it has other organisms within it, right? Or even if it is one of many on top of a large organism, no matter what layer of reality you're in, every single organism, and I don't mean to exclude inorganics, I'm sure they work something similarly, but I'm just not an inorganic, so it's more difficult to could wrap my head around, right? I accept it rationally, but I don't completely understand how it works. So, but every organic for certain has the presence of God within them, as well as everywhere around them, right? Which is back to the inorganics, right? But the fact of it is that in and of itself is another trait. That brings us to the third trait of God. Remember, I told you all these traits are essentially connected. They're inseparable. I don't want to use this word, but it's a trinity. Okay. Um, I don't want to evoke anyone's iconography or anything. I don't want them to think about something just because I use a word that might be related to another thing. So I'd ask you to try not to do that versus me trying to unpack those things every time, because I just don't. A lot of people do that, and I don't really want to get into it. Um, but yeah, omnipotence, omnipresence, and ultimately leading to omnisentience, right? The internal sense, the experience of it, the consciousness, right? The universe is a little black box. We call it a soul. We all have it. We all share the same one. We all have the same soul. And that soul creates a spirit, which is our individual code, right? Our barcode, if you will, our ego, our ID papers, right? Moving into the dystopia here, a little dystopia humor. Um, we all have at our core the soul, right? The soul is within all things. It keeps a record of all things. Why? Because it has to. Omnipotence, um, and it's capturing the experience from the side of the delusion that we are separate individuals. We're separate from not only God but from each other, right? Because if we accept that we are God and that we are connected to God, then we also have to accept that um, everything out there is us, right? We're connected to everything. We're not separate, right? Um, but we have to make choices about what that means and what reality we're going to live in and all of that. Okay? But we are not separate because within each of us is the sentience, the root presence, the essence of presence itself. Within each creation is the sentience of the soul, the core, the source, the universe itself, right? And that's just reality. That's just how it has to be, right? Anything else um, would immediately be obvious as a falsehood because you would immediately start to see um, the potential exclusions, right? You can't create everything. You can't create everything. If you have exclusions, you can't be the source, right? You're a branch of. Um, so every real God, the only real God, which is everything, right, would have to be omnipotent, omnipresent, and omniscient, which will lead, of course, to unconditional universal love. Love of self, all things are self. All is one, one is all. Right? That love. You love yourself to love everything else. That is unconditional love. That is absolute acceptance. And it demands that you not be fearful. It demands that you not be off-centered, right? You have to find and not retain, but know your peace. Because if you know your peace, then it belongs to you. It can't be taken from you, right? It can't. That is your default position. You return to peace, right? And when anything annoys you, just let it go. Like, that ain't me. That's not my default. You return to peace. You make your decisions because you don't try to figure out why you made your decisions afterwards, right? Because you are peace. Because this is what peace means to you, and this is what you believe, right? That is the spirit that you were created into, after all. The role you were given to play. It just isn't the way you may have been playing it. See, you can serve the same role, but play it in the way that you want to play it, right? There's always choices when it comes to creation. So as you play your role, know first your peace, right? As you exist, you live, you experience, you grow. First, know peace in yourself, right? And then know peace in everything else. And you don't even have to try to love then, because you'll just see it. It'll just be there, right? Because I'll tell you something else. If you don't know what love feels like, if you're wondering, try being at peace. There's no other way for you to really know what love feels like until you've spent at least one moment at peace. You can love as much as you can, and you can love others as much as you love yourself. But that love that you feel, if you haven't experienced peace, it is a pale reflection of the truth. Experience peace. Get a touch of omniscience, right? Be aware of omnipresence and understand the omnipotence of your reality. Understand the God, because it's everywhere and in everything. That includes this ideal you force forward, that you are separate. That includes that self, the identity of you, God. Play your role, but don't let it play you. Unless, of course, you think that this is all a game. We're going to have to get into that later, because it's a whole other portion of the topic.